Over the last couple of weeks, the Sunday Gospel readings from Matthew have shown how Jesus used parables to get a message across to his listeners. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a parable as a simple story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. One Bible commentary says this: "The importance of the parables can hardly be overestimated. They are generally regarded by scholars as sayings which we can confidently ascribe to the historical Jesus. They are, for the most part, his authentic words. Moreover, all of the great themes of Jesus' preaching are struck in the parables. Perhaps no part of the Gospels, then, can better put us into touch with the mind of Jesus than the parables. Today, they still present us with the challenge with which Jesus encountered his hearers in first century Palestine. And it is a measure of the value which the Church places upon them that every parable, without exception, occurs in the Sunday lectionary readings. This week's reading from Matthew 22 is the last parable in a set of 3 addressed to the chief priests and elders in the temple in Jerusalem. Together they uncover the mounting tension between those involved. 2 weeks ago, Jesus challenged the priests' failure to uphold what is right. Last week, in the parable of the vineyard and unfaithful tenants, he pinpointed their inability to recognize God's own messengers, even denying the authority of his own Son. This week, in the parable of the wedding feast, the priests show an unwillingness even to hear, let alone accept, any invitation from God. Now, if you thought all parables were so sweet little stories suitable for children, then this set of 3 readings might make you think again. Here, the scenarios range from examples of casual indifference and mundane excuses to cold-blooded violence. Some people have contested that such stories are barely conducive to the Christian message of love and gentleness, but others have said no, Jesus had to use language and images like these to get the message across. For the most part, the populace had heard, understood, and accepted what Jesus was saying. It was the custodians of the temple itself, the very heart of faith, who were unwilling to listen. So maybe the use of harsh imagery was a valid way for Jesus to try to penetrate their hearts and minds. In this week's readings, you may feel that Jesus is a little too harsh. The king comes across a man not wearing a proper wedding robe. He's thrown out because he's not appropriately dressed. That's hardly a kind gesture from the king, who extended the invitation to all the people outside. But maybe what Jesus is really trying to say is this: yes, God offers a welcome to all, but it does come with a bit of baggage. Will you accept the invitation and some of the responsibility which comes with it? For me, all of this strengthens the notion that we must look for the meaning of parables rather than examine the detail. What is Jesus trying to say to us? In some ways, the answer to this is up to you, and there may not always be a single message. To illustrate what I mean, I've put together a parable on my own, called the parable of the pear tree. In my garden, there is an old pear tree. It was well established when we moved into this house 30 years ago. Every year, it has yielded fruit, good fruit, but in various quantities. This year, our tree produced the best yield ever, in excess of 80 pounds of fruit, including some of the biggest pears we have ever seen. In late August, in the storms which battered the whole country, a lot of fruit dropped to the ground. We gathered it, stored it carefully, and it did ripen, but not to the excellent quality of that which stayed on the tree until mid-September. We were able to share much of that fruit with our family, friends, and others living in the village, and there's also a lot put by in the freezer. In this year of unparalleled challenges, you could maybe see this tree as representing God and His goodness, reaching out in times of difficulty, recognizing the current problems faced by all of us, and offering help and support. Perhaps we were asked to share God's goodness with others around us. That has certainly become a two-way practice, broadly manifested in our communities over the last 6 months. Some might interpret the story differently. The tree could be the church, the harvest, those who belong, stretching out to others with comfort, companionship, care, and an invitation to join them. I might leave you to find a meaning for those pears which fell to the ground when the storm buffeted. Of course, some of you might find that all of this a complete nonsense. That may be, but we must take seriously the original stories Jesus told. In his book called Introducing the New Testament, the writer John Drain concludes as follows. The real meaning of the parables must be inextricably bound up with the challenge they bring to those who hear or read them. They give us a picture of God and of His new society, and they challenge us to commit ourselves to accept His will. How we do that is up to us. Amen.